Chapter 9 of Angel Food, Little Talks to Little Folks by Rev. Gerald T. Brennan. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Maria Therese. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. There is a story which I hope you will all read some day. It is the story of Snow White. Maybe you would like me to tell you about Snow White. Would you? All right, I will. Snow White was a beautiful little princess. Oh, she was very, very beautiful. Why, Princess Snow White was so beautiful that the wicked old queen became jealous of her. The queen was so jealous that she ordered Snow White to be killed. But Snow White escaped and ran away into a big forest, where she found a funny house that belonged to 7 little men called Dwarfs. When the 7 little men saw how beautiful and good Snow White was, and when they heard how the queen tried to kill her, they felt sorry for the poor little Princess Snow White. So the little men told Snow White that she could stay in their house and be their housekeeper. Snow White and the 7 little men lived together very happily. The little men were away all day working in the forest, while Snow White stayed home alone taking care of the house. One day, when Snow White was working away by herself and whistling, a strange old lady came along. Now, the strange old lady was really the wicked queen in disguise, but poor Snow White didn't know that. You see, the queen had heard that Snow White was living with the dwarfs and had come to kill her. So the queen talked with the little princess and gave her a beautiful comb for her hair. But Snow White did not know that the comb was poisoned. When the queen went away, poor Snow White put the poisoned comb in her hair, and right away she fell down almost dead. When the little men came home, they found Snow White almost dead. Quickly they pulled the comb out of her hair, gave her something to drink, and soon the little princess began to get better. The little men were angry because someone had tried to kill Snow White, and they told her never to let anybody in the house again, not even to open the door. A few days later, when Snow White was all alone, another old lady came along. Of course it was the wicked queen again. This time Snow White wouldn't open the door. Yet she made a mistake. She opened a window and talked to the queen. The queen offered Snow White a most beautiful red apple, but the little princess was afraid and refused it. The queen then broke the apple in 2 and ate half of it herself. Poor Snow White thought the apple must be all right, so she took the other half. Snow White did not know that her half of the apple was poisoned by the bad queen. So, when Snow White ate her half of the apple, again she fell down and seemed to be dead. When the little men came home, they thought sure Snow White was dead. They couldn't make her wake up. Then they thought of their friend, a young prince, who lived in a castle near their house, and they sent for him. Yet when the young prince saw Snow White, he kissed her, and what do you think happened? Why, Snow White woke up. She wasn't dead at all. The 7 little men danced with joy. The prince liked Snow White so well he asked her to marry him, and Snow White liked the young prince so much she said she would. When they had said good-bye to the 7 little men, the prince took Snow White away to his beautiful castle, where they lived happily ever after. You know, boys and girls, this story made me think of a lot of things. Princess Snow White made me think of your souls. All of your souls are beautiful and good, and Snow White is a dandy name for your souls. And who is the wicked queen? The wicked queen is a terrible old devil. The devil, like the queen, is jealous of your souls, and is always trying to kill your souls by making sin look nice to you. He tries to make you forget that sin poisons your souls. What do the 7 little men make you think of? Guess. Well, I'll tell you. The 7 little men are just like the 7 sacraments. You know, the sacraments keep sin away from your souls. When sin poisons your souls, why, the sacraments, especially confession and Holy Communion, make your souls well and beautiful again. When Snow White was poisoned, the 7 little men saved her and made her well again. Maybe you can tell me now who the prince is. Who? Our Lord. Good. Yes, If it were not for the 7 little men, Snow White would never have met the Prince. And if you don't use the 7 sacraments, especially confession and Holy Communion, you will never meet our Prince, our Lord." The Prince took Snow White off to his castle, just as our Lord will take you some day to His castle, where you will live happily forever and forever. What is our Lord's castle? Yes, heaven. I think our Lord would like this story. Don't you? End of chapter 9.